Hi, everyone. Welcome to BTS with ENW. This is Before the Stage with Emily N. Wells. I'm the artistic director here at the Human Race Theater Company, and I am so excited for our guest today, my friend, my mentor, Bob Hetherington, director of the very first production of Dracula here at the Human Race
Mm.
Theater Company back in 1986. Welcome, Bob.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. My goodness, 86. Ugh.
I know. What have we learned in the last 40 years?
Yeah, that you didn't know as much as you thought you did.
Exactly. I'm super excited to have you as our guest today, and because you're going to be joining us in the spring to direct Hay Fever.
Indeed.
How
Indeed.
long has it been since you've directed at the Human Race?
Um, let's see. 1997,
Hmm.
Angels in America.
Indeed. Indeed. So we are so excited to have you back. What a thrill for us, for
Mm,
me personally, but for the company also to have one of the resident artists returning to us after so many years away. And I'm really thrilled personally and professionally to have you with us.
me too. Me too. Thank you.
Okay, but we want to get into the details about Dracula 40 years ago and hear a little bit about how the production came to be, any little fun little stories and memories that you might have to share with us. But let's start with, how did Dracula come to be the first show picked by the Human Race Theater Company?
Well, these were the days before the Loft Theater.
Hmm.
So the Loft Theater was the old vacant Metropolitan department store.
Hmm.
So that would come later. Um, and somehow it was probably Susie Bassani who said the inaugural production was going to be at the Victoria Theater. Was it the Victoria Theater then, or was it still the Victory
I think it
Theater?
was still the Victory.
The Victory Theater,
Yeah.
because it went through a giant renovation
Hmm.
and then they renamed it the Victoria Theater. So I think it was, you're right, I think it was the Victory Theater. And because we were going into the big house and because we didn't have a lot of artistic credentials,
Hmm.
um, uh, Scott Stoney, Kevin Moore, Marcia Hanna had all been doing brilliant work with something called the Illumination
Hmm.
Theater, which was sort of a narrative theater
Hmm.
approach to doing work. And Scott and Marcia were affiliated with Sinclair
Hmm.
College, and they often used Sinclair as their venue for
Hmm.
it. I had a full-time job at Wright State University, and Kevin, I think, was sleeping in a van by the park. Um, no,
We'll call Kevin to verify.
yes, he was not homeless, but anyway, so it was the four of us that were. Susie had brought us together and said, "Darlings, we have a symphony and a dance company and an art institute, but we don't have a professional theater, and we are going to have a professional theater, and you are going to be it." Um, I think it was Susie who would have said, "We're going to do this show at the Victory Theater,"
Hmm.
which meant we were not going to be doing Angels in America or
Hmm.
Waiting for Godot, or it
Right.
needed to be a popular
Hmm.
attraction.
Hmm.
And I don't think Dracula was my idea, but I can't remember whose it was.
Hmm.
Count Dracula was my idea, the
Hmm.
version that we did.
Hmm.
And we did it because it had a batty old lady in it
Hmm.
for comic relief.
Yes.
And Carol Lee was associated with the company, and it was a perfect role for Carol Lee. And I don't think I'm making this up, but Scott really wanted to play Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
So from the very beginning, it was going to be Scott was going to play
Mm-hmm.
the Prince of Darkness.
You know, we
Um,
still have audience members that have been following the company since the beginning who remember Scott as the first blonde Dracula
yeah.
that they
Eh,
had ever seen. And
ah,
it was so formative for them that it just sort of
ah.
changed their perception of what that role could be, which is pretty cool.
And that was entirely Scott's idea.
Hmm.
Um, I remember the day that he told me, I want to play him blonde. And I said, really? And he said, yes, yes, I do. That was entirely Scott's idea. Um, so we settled upon Count Dracula and we decided
Hmm.
we could do that. It also um, has one less set than many other
Right.
productions of Dracula. So it's all the drawing room
Hmm.
until an in one staking in the crypt at the
Right.
last 10 minutes.
Uh-huh.
So we thought, okay, well, this will be economical
Hmm.
for us to do that. And we didn't have a resident company.
Hmm.
So we really relied on the kindness of strangers in
Hmm.
town. And there were several community performers. There were some students from Wright State and one of my faculty colleagues, Mark Olson from Wright State. So we held auditions and we pulled in the best people that we could.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure why I directed it and not Marcia or Kevin,
Hmm.
but I only remember, oh yeah, I was going to direct it.
Hmm.
Um, and the summer before it was, the year before it was going to be done, I
Hmm.
got hired at Otterbein College Summer Theater in Westerville,
Hmm.
Ohio, and went off to direct a couple summer stock productions there.
Hmm.
And I was doing a production of Jacques Brel, and they had an alum doing the set design for
Hmm.
the production, D. Martin Bookwalter, who had an armload of awards from Los Angeles
Right.
for theater, but also a lot of TV
Right.
awards. And they brought Marty in as the set designer, and that's where I met Marty Bookwalter. So I was talking to him about we're going to do this Dracula production. He says, "Oh, I've never done a Dracula production." So when I came back, I told the my friends, "Hey, I think I found a set designer for us, and he would really like to do this."
Hmm.
And Susie interviewed Marty Bookwalter and fell in love with him, and that's how we got this California set designer to do the
Amazing.
production. And Marty was and is a great character, and he did a spectacular design for the production. Um, and we thought the Victory Theater was the perfect place to try to do this sort of old, dusty Victorian horror
Right.
comedy show.
Right. Right. I think Dracula's got so much potential, especially because it's just gone through so many iterations and so many versions, novels, films, stage plays, musicals,
Yeah,
that have
yeah.
really kind of put it in our collective unconscious as a story. And there's so many tropes that now kind of come along with it. The heightened accent, the stereotypical behaviors, the things that vampires are that repel them, the things that appeal to them, all that kind of stuff. What do you think the fascination is with this sort of dark and bloody
Ah,
gothic horror story?
well, I have a very specific answer for you that none of my students, and I'll bet none of your cast, have thought about either because of history and generational changes.
Hmm.
In 1985, 1986,
Hmm.
Everything was AIDS.
Right. Hmm.
And here was a story about um, uh, an exotic, somewhat pansexual
Sure.
character who exchanged bodily fluids with
Hmm.
repressed Victorian women and
Hmm.
turned them into nymphomaniacs.
Right.
And the whole idea of um, exchanging blood could kill you
Hmm.
was something that meant something very different to my cast of Dracula
Absolutely.
than to your cast of Dracula.
Absolutely.
So I think every version of Dracula so far has, talked about Victorian repression and
Hmm.
unleashing
Hmm.
sexual appetites
Hmm.
and oh, there's there's so much weird research about
Hmm.
Dracula and vampires. And
Yeah.
um, another time, I'm working on a production at the Shaw Festival and doing dramaturgy for them, and I fell into a shelf of literature about Victorian meat culture, MEAT.
Oh. Uh-huh.
So, second class people in the Victorian era ate vegetables and potatoes
Hmm.
and couldn't afford meat, and they didn't eat meat. Gentlemen ate meat. The bloodier, the better.
Hmm.
So the whole idea here is that Dracula is a meat eater
Hmm.
and gets women
Hmm.
to eat bloody meat
Hmm.
and masculinizes them
Hmm.
by getting them to do that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And a lot of people have gotten published and gotten PhDs writing about Victorian meat culture and
Right.
vampirisms.
How fascinating. I think it's interesting then. What I love about Kate's adaptation is that it takes all of sort of the lore and history, and takes it and puts it up against sort of the Me Too movement of 2018 and
Uh,
2019, and talks about feminism as well as toxic masculinity. And that is sort of the
mhm.
implication that vampirism is part of that uh, cultural identity or cultural movement,
Sure.
both on the Me Too movement side as well as our ability now to talk about toxic masculinity as something that is taught, that is passed,
Sure.
can be passed on generation to generation and transferred from one person to another. So I think there's a real interesting uh, historical. I think you're right. If we looked at, vampire storytelling throughout the last 130, 40 years or so since the novel was written, how it's applied to different cultural movements and social events over the course of that time, I think that would be actually, that could be a good PhD study, now taking a bigger lens.
Yeah, it is. It's a mirror to a lot
Yeah.
of different ages.
And I think there's such an interesting corollary too between religion and sort of the use of the blood, and certainly this is true in Kate Hamill's adaptation. There's an approach to faith and what that
Hmm.
means, drinking the blood of another, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for certainly looking at it through a Christian lens, there is a lot of that connection there too.
It's true. It's true. And I often think of Bram Stoker working as a stage manager at the
Hmm.
Lyceum Theatre in London, watching Henry Irving and Ellen Terry do Shakespeare on stage.
Right?
And in the stage manager's wings, he's writing Dracula.
Right? Right? Hey, the best of us used to be stage managers. I mean,
Yeah, that's right. The heritage. Yeah.
well, any other fun little anecdotes that you can share with us about this original production of Dracula for us here at the Human Race?
At the first act curtain of just before the intermission, um, Scott Stoney as Dracula standing upstage center in front of French windows. We set off a smoke bomb and a cloud of smoke for him to instantly transform into a bat.
Hmm.
And the bat was rigged to fly downstage towards the audience and then up precipitously to behind the proscenium arch, where it docked in a little box,
Hmm.
and a second bat dropped from the box
Hmm.
and swung over the audience and flew into a little box mounted on the balcony rail.
Hmm.
I will tell you, every night in dress rehearsals, it worked perfectly.
Hmm.
And we were all applauding at the end of it because we
Yes.
thought, boy, they're going to be talking about this at the
Magic
intermission.
tricks. Yes.
Until the opening night. And the opening night, the first bat comes down perfectly and up behind the proscenium arch. And then the second bat is released
Hmm.
and he drops down and loses steam
Oh no.
and swings over the audience and then arcs back and forth until he comes to a dead stop, sort of over row G in the Victory Theater, hanging there and had no energy to get to the balcony rail.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was humiliating.
Oh
It was just
no.
humiliating.
Oh no. And one might have just been able to train the bats living in the fly space
Yes, that's
there
right.
at the Victory. Maybe you could train
Yes,
one of
that's
those to have done that maneuver, but
yes,
I
that's
love that.
right. Well, Nelson, the long time stagehand at the Victory, I remember him saying to me, Bobby, all I have to do is set off my shotgun backstage, and a whole flock of bats will come into the theater.
That might be too much of a stage assignment.
Yes.
Too much. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for spending a little time with us and sharing some memories of the first production of Dracula 40 years ago in April of 1986. And we're looking forward to looking back to that and moving us forward into the next decade of the Human Race Theater Company with Dracula by Kate Hamill. It's Dracula, a feminist revenge fantasy, really, October 29th through November 9th. Tickets available at humanracetheater.org. Thank you so much, Bob. We can't wait to see you back here in the spring for Hay Fever.
Thank you, Emily. Good luck with your vampires.
Thank you.